Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome to 2019, the year in review episode of Got a Minute More. We're taking a look back at our favorite movies and some of our least favorite movies from the year 2018. And we're going to give you a little top 10 list, and Kevin's going to give you a little bottom 5, too, because Kevin tends to sort of go out of his way to watch bad movies as well, Kevin.
Yeah, it should be noted, though, that this year, actually, most of these weren't go out of my way to see a movie I know I'm going to hate. Most of these were movies I had some semblance of hope for and fell catastrophically flat.
Fantastic. Can't wait for that. All right, well, let's get right into it. We'll try to avoid spoilers here as much as we can because we know some of you still haven't seen a lot of these movies, especially with some of the Oscar contenders that are just slowly starting to come out now. Let's start with your number 10, Kevin.
So my number 10 is Eighth Grade, Bo Burnham's directorial debut. He's a stand-up comedian. He wrote and directed this. It is about a girl in 8th grade just dealing with just what all that entails, societal pressures and peer pressure, everything like that. She has social anxiety, and that's something that really spoke to me as someone who's dealt with that throughout my entire life.
Right.
Seeing her struggle with that really hit home with me. I think it's a pretty beautiful movie, and Elsie Fisher in the starring role is absolutely incredible the whole way through. It feels incredibly authentic. It feels like, it feels like the voice of someone who is that old, where movies like that are normally written by, 55-year-old men, and they just come across as anything but. This is, I think Bo Burnham's in his early 20s, so he's not super detached from this age group. I just thought it was great.
Certainly from his YouTube and Vine videos, and that doesn't seem terribly mature either, which, I mean, that sort of goes into the way that he writes these characters, but it's also an incredibly mature movie considering he's a first-time feature director as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's a really, really good movie. It did get a lot of hype because for a while it was 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, and I believe it was briefly the best reviewed movie in the history of Rotten Tomatoes.
Right.
That has changed, but it's still incredibly worth a watch. And this one's been out for a while. I don't know if it's out on Blu-ray yet, but it should be relatively close. Yeah.
No, I picked it up a little while back. It's an excellent movie. It is on my list as well, so you'll find out where a little bit later. For me, number 10 is a movie that a lot of people have as number 1 on their lists right now. It's Roma, the new Alfonso Cuarón movie. Sort of went direct to Netflix via the festival circuit, so that it is Oscar eligible, and also got a limited theatrical release as well. It's the story essentially of Alfonso Cuarón's childhood, but sort of told through the eyes of one of his family's servants, essentially a maid, an indigenous Mexican woman who experiences all these moments in their lives and has some of her own as well. Really excellent movie. I didn't put it any higher because, as I mentioned in our review that we did, the sense of emotional detachment that I got from it sort of moved things down the list for me. I felt like very much like an outsider. I felt like I wasn't totally emotionally connected to the people who were in that movie.
Yeah, I mean, we just spoke about this on the last podcast. I think my problem is just the style of the direction. I think it's too slow paced. I think it's too artsy for its own good at times. When the movie does hit you, it'll hit you like a ton of bricks. It's extremely worth a watch. It's very, very, very good. It would have been relatively close, but it is not on my list.
Easily one of the best Netflix originals, maybe even the best Netflix original as far as feature films are concerned. But of course, certainly. The bar wasn't terribly high for that. Ninth Grade is my number 9. So, or ninth grade, 8th grade is my number 9. So we don't really need to revisit that. But yeah, I too had very, very high opinions of this first time movie from Bo Burnham. Elsie Fisher, fully deserving of the awards attention she's now getting as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess we'll skip right to my number 9.
I got nothing else to say, bud. You go. By the
So
way, for those of you who are listening, Kevin and I do not share our lists beforehand, so I honestly have no idea what he's going to say, and I don't think he has too much of an idea of what I'm going to say.
nope. I do have a pretty strong inclination that this will be on your list as well, but obviously higher
Hmm.
now. And my number 9 is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. When the trailer first came out, I saw a lot of concern about the animation style, and once you go and actually see the movie, it's the animation style that really makes the movie as good as it is and as much fun as it is. It is
Hmm.
basically a comic book movie come to life in a very literal sense. There's all the staples of a comic book, from text bubbles and yellow explaining text or like monologue text. There's also what I really love about the direction style is there are a lot of shots where it'll just kind of like the movie will slow down for, like a second or something to linger on a shot just slightly slower and slightly longer, as if that single shot is a panel of a comic. And I thought it was brilliant. I thought the story is great. It's a ton of fun. It's very funny, and the art style to the movie is absolutely incredible, very creative, and yeah, it's one of the best superhero movies, and it is the best animated movie this year.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. Unfortunately, it actually did get bumped out of my top 10, Kevin, by
Oh.
a movie that we saw today. We'll get to that a little bit later in the list. But yeah, I think you're right about the animation style too, and the fact that there are sort of shifting animated styles for the various characters in the different Spider Verse universes that eventually sort of combine at the end. That worked really, really well for me.
Yeah. So my number 8 is a movie called Leave No Trace. Leave No Trace stars Ben Foster and Thomasin McKenzie. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I'm
Yeah, I
trying
think
my
you're right.
best. Um, it got a lot of attention around the summer this year at film festivals and stuff like that. It is currently still at 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. It is the best reviewed movie of the year on Rotten Tomatoes.
Right.
Um, it is directed by Deborah Granick, who directed Winter's Bone from years ago, which was kind of Jennifer Lawrence's coming out party and an Academy Award darling. It basically tells the story of a father and daughter who have moved out into the woods and are living off the land, kind of off the grid. He has PTSD and can't be around people,
Right.
and basically the drama of the story is his daughter starts to pine more and more for a regular life, a regular existence. They will go into town every so often and interact with people, and she starts to want that more and more. And that's kind of the dramatic head of she wants her father to be happy, but she also wants to be a normal kid.
Right. Yeah, another movie that falls just outside of my top 10 list, by the way. Just. Yeah, really, really good. The performances from, well, everybody in the movie, really, but especially Mackenzie and Foster. I think Thomasin McKenzie might be like a first timer as well. It's insane. She's really, really good in this movie in a role that's very, very demanding on her emotionally. So impressive, but like I say, just outside my top 10. My number 8, don't laugh, Paddington 2. A really, really solid sequel to what was a very good movie in 2014 already, the first Paddington movie. Computer animated bear in the real world interacting with people, based very much on the old Paddington books from back in the day. Features a fantastic villain turn from Hugh Grant. Features an even better sort of villain turn. And then I don't want to spoil anything from Brendan Gleeson. Paddington at one point ends up in prison. And hilarity absolutely ensues. It's really, really sweet movie, really cute, a fantastic animation on Paddington himself, great story, surprisingly great kids movie.
Yeah, this I unfortunately have not seen yet, and I know it's gotten a ton of attention because it was the movie that knocked Eighth Grade off of the 100% Rotten Tomatoes best
Right.
reviewed movie ever list for a very long stretch of time. Yeah, I just haven't gotten around to seeing it. I'm not really sure why. I I'm a bad person, I assume.
I think that's, yeah, probably the case.
Yeah.
Moving on, number 7 for me. I'm going big here. Avengers: Infinity War.
Okay, so before we go
Go.
any further, this is also my number 7. So let's
Perfect
joint do
timing.
this. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. I mean, just one of the most terribly entertaining movies I've ever seen, and an incredible payoff for the, what was it, 19 or 20? It was actually, no, it was 18 movies that came before, because I think that was number 19 in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah, and it just the scope of the filmmaking that's on display here is incredible. The amount of characters, the effects work, just everything that they had to pull together to make this movie work, for it to be as cohesive, to give everyone their time to shine, and to ultimately end it with one of the most courageous endings to a giant blockbuster like that I've seen since, I don't even know what the last one would be that even comes close to that.
Hmm.
It's a really impressive feat of filmmaking.
Yeah. I mean, it's, you could go back to The Empire Strikes Back, I think, for just
Yeah.
that kind of, the kind of gusto to go for that kind of an ending in a major film franchise. And obviously, people, if I'm referencing The Empire Strikes Back here, people already knew that Empire Strikes Back was going to be a massive success, just because of the incredible success of the original Star Wars. So, the parallels kind of work there, I think. And man, I just can't imagine being the Russo brothers, the directors of the movies, for those who don't know, and looking at the cast sheet and wondering, how the hell are we going to make this work? Because I think we counted, there's something like 20, the mid 20s, something like that, number of superheroes in this movie.
Hmm.
It's unbelievable, the balance, as you say, and the attention that all of them get. Just absolutely blown away.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just scrolling down on the IMDb cast list, and 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18,
Carry the one. It might be 30s.
so the 30th credited actor in this movie on the IMDb page is Chris Pratt. That's how
Yeah.
big this movie is.
Chris
That
Pratt, who had previously been the first credited in, $500 million Marvel Cinematic Universe movies.
Yeah, exactly. One of the biggest stars in all of Hollywood, and he is 30th on this list. That's how big this movie is. That's how much they had to juggle. And for it to all work is a really, really impressive feat.
All right, go with your number 6, Kev.
So before I do the top 6, I want to give a disclaimer here. This is where this became just an absolute nightmare to me. I will say, this top 6, you could ask me again tomorrow, and this could look different, but this is the way I have it right now. So at number 6, I have Free Solo, the documentary about rock climber Alex Honnold, or
Which I still
Honnold.
have not seen.
I really love it. As I said during one of our previous podcasts, this is one of the best documentaries I've ever seen in my life. It is one of the best movies of the year. It's a really, really interesting character study into someone who is so singularly focused on this one thing. It's the one thing that makes him who he is, and it's a incredibly touching character study on him, on the people around him, and what would make someone do what he does for a living.
Yeah, it's a movie that I really, really have to get to see. Number 6 for me, Black Klansman, the new Spike Lee movie starring Denzel Washington's son, whose name escapes me right now, and I'm frantically searching for it. And oh, sorry, Adam Driver as well. It's John David Washington. It's a true to life story of a police officer, a black police officer, and I believe it was Denver, somewhere in Colorado, who essentially went undercover in the Ku Klux Klan. And how would that work, you wonder? Well, he had to recruit a white police officer, Adam Driver, to actually pretend to be him. He makes phone calls to the Klan, sets up these meetings and that sort of thing, pretends to be a white man, goes undercover in the Klan, and the plot just sort of goes from there. It's like they're trying to keep up this game where Adam Driver is actually John David Washington, and it's insane. I can't believe it's actually a real story. It's also incredibly relevant to today as well, even before the prologue. And I won't spoil what the epilogue, I should say. I won't spoil what the epilogue is, but it was incredibly affecting, and there was an incredibly affecting speech earlier in the movie as well with Harry Belafonte giving this incredible speech that's intercut with scenes of the Klan trying to set up a burning cross. Just an incredibly moving piece of film to me, and a real return to form for Spike Lee.
Yeah, the ending of that is particularly spectacular and incredibly powerful. It is outside my top 10 list because I thought a different movie did what it was trying to do better than it did, and you will hear about that shortly.
And that is what you call the teaser, folks. Your number 5, Kev.
So my number 5 is Annihilation, written and directed by Alex Garland, who previously wrote and directed possibly my favorite movie of the last 10 years with Ex Machina. And it stars basically an entire female cast: Natalie Portman, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Tessa Thompson, Gina Rodriguez. And it is an incredibly beautiful looking movie, and it's incredibly beautiful what it's trying to do. It's very heady science fiction. I won't give too much away here. The basic premise is it is some weird light has appeared on Earth, and people keep going in and getting lost, so they send in this team of scientists led by Natalie Portman and Jennifer Jason Leigh to try and investigate what's inside what they call the Shimmer. It is beautiful. It is heartwarming. At times it's very scary, and it ultimately ends with one of the most brave and creative ends to a movie I've seen in ages.
Yeah, absolutely, and a little bit ambiguous as well, and it allows for you rather to sort of fill in the blanks with your imagination. I might as well just say it now because I'm going to go back to back on these things. Annihilation is my number 4, so it's just a little bit ahead of this. But before I go into that, Mission Impossible Fallout is my number 5. Again, just an absolutely thoroughly entertaining piece of action filmmaking. And a real, I don't want to say return to form again, because I already said that for Spike Lee, but a real kind of return to form for the franchise. If you know me, you know I wasn't a big fan of the previous Mission Impossible, which was Rogue Nation, also directed by Christopher McQuarrie. I think this one is far, far, far better. I think it's one of the best in the franchise, if not the best in the franchise. It's very close to Ghost Protocol for me, which was my previous favorite Mission Impossible movie. The stunts, I mean, what can you say about the stunts? The fact that Tom Cruise himself performed a halo jump and did it all basically in one take as well, with a cameraman who was also performing the same halo jump and had to actually shoot him and another stuntman. It's just an absolutely remarkable piece of action filmmaking. One of the best action movies since, I don't know, a long time. Feels like we've said that a few times.
Mad Max Fury Road.
There you go. Since Edge of Tomorrow, another Tom Cruise movie.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Mission Impossible Fallout, unbelievable movie. Since I've already given you my number 4, which again is Annihilation, Kevin, why don't you go for number 4?
So my number 4 is First Reformed. First Reformed is written and directed by Paul Schrader, who is extremely famous for a bunch of movies that came out a very, 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 very long time ago.
Very.
Yeah. Most of his biggest successes were before I was born, and I am not a particularly young person, so he wrote Taxi Driver and Raging Bull.
Right.
It's been a long time since he's done anything that was particularly noteworthy or particularly good, and this is really great. This is a very impactful story about a minister in a small church, just grappling with depression from things that have happened in his past and things that are happening to him currently, and where the story winds up is very bleak, very dark, very upsetting. It's extremely powerful, and Ethan Hawke has done a lot of good stuff now in his career, but I don't think he's ever been better in any movie in his life than he is here in this movie. He is absolutely outstanding. If I recall, he is on screen for every single second of this movie.
What?
Um, if I recall correctly, because it's entirely his point of view. So
Right.
I don't think there's a moment that he isn't on screen. And well, sorry, not on screen. Like they'll have like cutaways to another character if they're
Right,
having a
right. But
conversation.
in the
But like,
scene.
yes, and the camera, it's very interesting the way it's shot because the camera, again, if I'm remembering correctly, almost never moves.
Right.
Everything is just a static shot from a distance or from a person's point of view. It's like you're spying on the entire movie, essentially. And I loved everything about it. I thought it was super powerful. I had heard a lot of good things. I hadn't gotten around to seeing it until fairly recently, and yeah, it just popped into the top half of my top 10. I absolutely loved it.
I have yet to get my hands on a copy of that movie, but I think I actually do. I have one on the way. I can't remember. I put a bunch of movies in my basket for Christmas shopping, essentially from Amazon, and I think that actually might be one of them because I had heard so many good things about it. Obviously, not in my top 10 though, as I haven't seen it yet. Moving on to number three. I guess I'll start for this one. For me, number three is First Man, Damien Chazelle's fourth feature film, as I found out after making a mistake in the review. He has, of course, previously directed La La Land and Whiplash, both of which were nominated for Best Picture, by the way. He's probably going to go 3 for 3 with this one. There was a little bit of a problem that I had when I wrote the original review, which, since having seen it now, because it's out on digitals, having seen it for a second time, actually I overcame a little bit. The film, unfortunately, isn't anywhere near as good to watch on a small screen, but I actually did get a little bit more emotionally invested in the personal story of Neil Armstrong than I did on my initial viewing, and that really, really helped to bring the movie back up for me. It was probably going to be in my top 10 anyway, but to now have it in the top 5, in the top 3, in fact, was a big move for it. And yeah, really, it was that second viewing that sort of saved the movie for me. The original review that I put up as well, though, gave incredibly high praise. Claire Foy and Ryan Gosling are both amazing, and the sequences that are shot about space anyway, are absolutely breathtaking. Maybe the best that I've ever seen on film, especially the Apollo 11 moon landing sequence, which just literally took the breath out of my lungs.
Yeah, it's incredible when it's incredible. I still have the complaint that you say you've overcome now about the investment in his personal story leading up to the space stuff.
Right.
So it does not feature in my top 10, but it's a really great piece of filmmaking, and all the stuff that he shot in IMAX when they're in the spaceship
Oh,
is just unbelievably gorgeous, and
ugh.
it's among the best half hours. The last half hour of that movie is among the best 30 minutes of filmmaking you will see in ages.
Yeah, it's I could watch that just last half hour, as you say, for just endlessly on a loop, and I don't think I would ever get tired of it. Your number three, Kevin?
So my number three, and this was at one point number one. So like I said, this all kind of fluctuates all over the place for me. My number three is Blind Spotting, and this is what I was talking about a movie that did what Black Klansman was trying to do better than Black Klansman in my
Right.
mind. This is the movie I'm talking about. This is written and stars Daveed Diggs from the musical Hamilton. It is a frequently funny and frequently incredibly, incredibly powerful and emotional movie about a man, Daveed Diggs, who is on his final days of probation and witnesses a police officer shoot an unarmed black man who is running away from him in the back. And the combination of the entertainment value, the performances from Daveed Diggs and Rafael Casal, who is the co-writer of the movie with him, and this is essentially his first movie. It's really powerful. It's really funny. It does all aspects of what BlacKkKlansman is being touted as doing, being funny and then also being very poignant and powerful. It does both of those things better than BlacKkKlansman does in my mind.
Yeah, so you and I saw this movie together. I think it was actually your second time seeing it, my first time seeing it.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, I really liked the movie in the moment. And when I was putting together this top 10 list, I considered putting it in there. And then I realized that I didn't really remember much about it. Like nothing, no, I shouldn't say nothing, but not a lot stuck out as memorable for me. And that's probably why I lean more towards BlacKkKlansman, because for whatever reason, that movie just completely stuck with me.
See, I feel the exact opposite. I remember very little about BlacKkKlansman, and I remember almost all of that of Blindspotting. I remember the ending. I remember the party scene. I remember that when he witnesses the shooting.
Right.
I remember various dream sequences. I remember just a ton about the movie, and I haven't seen it since we saw it in theater, but it just stuck with me, and it's one of the most powerful movies I've seen this year.
And I can definitely say I remember the ending, because that was an incredibly powerful piece. Without spoiling anything, we'll just say that the last 6-7 minutes of the movie, well, the 6-7 minutes that just precede the credit roll by about 4 or 5 minutes or whatever, they're incredible. They're absolutely incredible. And I was just blown away, and I did not want that sequence to end. So for sure, it has one of the most powerful endings this year. Kevin, I have a feeling our top two are going to be pretty close to identical here, because I haven't heard you mention either of the movies that are on my list, and I know that they're in your top 10. So go for your number two.
So my number two, we just saw it today. It is The Favorite.
It's my number two as well.
So The Favorite is directed by Yorgos Lanthimos.
Right.
Who,
first movie he hasn't written that he directed, or this maybe the second, but the first in a while that he hasn't written himself.
Yeah, so he famously directed The Lobster, which was kind of his big breakout, and Killing of a Sacred Deer from last year. I absolutely love The Lobster. I was not a big fan of Killing of a Sacred Deer, and a lot of my complaints about Killing of a Sacred Deer are completely gone in this movie.
Right.
There is, people are reacting and behaving as human beings, and yeah, it's
unlike
just
in Sacred Deer,
yeah, it's incredibly
just
powerful. The three main characters, Olivia Colman, Rachel Weisz, and Emma Stone, are all just brilliant performances. And
especially Coleman too. And this is one of the things that I'm saying in the review as well. I'm actually just putting the review together. It'll be out before this podcast, but in my head, it's not done yet. Is that Coleman could have played that role just for laughs. And she doesn't. She imbues that character with so much empathy, with so much sympathy, and with so much kind of depth that, it surprised me, because that really could have been a very one-note character, and it wasn't at all.
Yeah, and I just absolutely love the story that's being told here. I love the script so much. I love everything that it's trying to do. Just as a brief overview, I guess, this is set in the 18th century. Queen Anne is increasingly frail. She suffers from gout and various other health issues.
Right. I think there's a stroke mixed in there somewhere.
Queen Anne is played by Olivia Colman, and Lady Sarah, Rachel Weisz, essentially runs the country as Queen Anne's assistant, and a new servant played by Emma Stone arrives and starts to worm her way into the graces of Queen Anne and the graces of everyone in the castle, and it's their battle for not just the grace of the queen, but also the ability to essentially run the country.
Right.
And the last thing I'll say about the movie, and then you can say your piece, is this is the best ending to a movie this year.
Yeah, I will not argue with that at all. You and I both looked at each other afterwards and went, "What?" Like it was just, it was perfect. It was, and Lanthimos has actually been in the past accused of not knowing how to end a movie. I don't think you'll find any complaints about that here. I don't know, but there, I think there were actually some people behind us who were complaining and thinking that was not a proper ending. Those people clearly did not get it. It was perfect. I loved that movie. It was really, really good. Emma Stone, playing a different character than she's ever played before. Rachel Weisz just commands so much presence, so much attention every time she's on screen. Every word she says is so cutting, and just her voice is just a weapon throughout the movie. And that's down to the screenplay as well by Deborah Davis and Tony McNamara, who just absolutely nailed this one.
Yeah, it's just great. It's just great all the way through.
Yep, absolutely. Which leaves number one. And again, I think we both know what it is. What, do you want to say it in unison? No, that'd be ridiculous. It's Hereditary, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that was easy. All right, thanks, folks. Well, we should probably give our thoughts on it.
So this is directed by Ari Aster, who is, I think, 31, 32 years old. This is his feature film directorial debut, and it is one of the best horror movies I've ever seen in my life, just full stop there.
Yeah, the craft on display is just absolutely amazing. The most shocking scene in the movie happens maybe, about 45 minutes to an hour in it. And then, because it's such a slow build to that, and again, we won't say what it is, but there's such a slow build to it. And then it just lingers on that moment for minutes and minutes and minutes. And as it lingers, the horror just absolutely increases. I don't think I've ever experienced anything like that in the theater before. It was incredible.
Yeah, that is really like the coup de grace moment of the movie, essentially.
Absolutely.
The whole movie is just brilliantly paced and brilliantly shot. But that is really the moment when keeping it as vague as possible, when event happens and it makes you linger on it for so long. I think it's like 7 or 8 minutes where it's just almost nothing is happening in the movie. It's just the movie is lingering in that space and you're just stewing in it for the entire time. And then when it finally breaks itself back out and gets back into a movie, it just picks right up. It's brilliant. I love the fact that, and I said this when we discussed this before, one of the things I really love about the movie is the fact that if you go in not knowing what it is, there are so many fake versions of what the movie is. It'll present you with a version of a horror movie you've seen before, right, and then take it away because it's not doing that. So early on, I think one of the first scenes in the movie is a scene where Toni Collette goes into the attic and she sees the ghost of her mother. And it's like, oh, it's going to be like, The Conjuring or whatever. Right. That's the only time she sees it. It's only there. I mean, it serves a narrative purpose, but it's also presented in a way where it's like, maybe the movie is this. And then it'll promptly take that away from you. And same thing with the kid is kind of presented as Millie Shapiro, the kid, Charlie, is kind of presented as it could be like a Omen type movie with like an evil kid. Right. And then that is taken away from you. You discover that she is anything but. it just keeps you on your toes the whole way through. And then when it finally does reveal what it's doing, it is also one of the most effective, just pure horror movies that you will see in a long, long time. It's very scary.
The last half hour of it, I was absolutely like just clutching the armrests, just wondering where this was going to go, because it's so good at building those scares and not being cheap about it in any way, shape, or form. None of the scares in the movie are cheap. The reaction of the audience, because again, you and I saw this on the same night, was unbelievable. Like, they were so into it, and it's, you know, it's rare to have a movie experience like that anymore, where people aren't mocking, or you could just tell that everyone was just completely on the edge of their seats, 100% into the movie.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because there was a specific group of women that came into the movie relatively late, and
Right.
when we saw it, it was the second time I had seen the movie.
Oh, that's right.
So I thought in my head, they're gonna hate this. And then to see them be as invested as they were in every single moment of it and reacting the way they were was just amazing. And I can't wait to see what Ari Aster does next. I know his next movie is in post production. It's called Midsommar
Okay.
question mark. I have very little idea what it's about. The IMDb profile is just one sentence. It says a young woman reluctantly joins her boyfriend on a summer trip where things quickly go awry.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, things certainly went awry in this movie, so maybe.
Yeah, I would imagine things will go awry, as is Ari Aster's want. But yeah, it's super exciting, and there is a really cool interview if you're interested as well on YouTube. It's a TIFF interview where with Ari Aster where he talks about the making of the movie and
Right.
some of the things he's saying about like the attention to detail um because Toni Collette's character her job is like making miniature scenery. It's like
Yeah, like pieces for doll houses, I think, right?
yeah, that kind of thing. And he basically explains that like because they had professional miniature designers on set for that, he would also have them design the entire house that the movie was taking part in
Right.
so that he could like measure out like okay, so for this scene it's going to take place in this room. I want these people standing here like this, and I want to be able to do this for with the camera. So how big does the room need to be so that I can do all this?
Right.
It's an attention to detail that for someone who is in his early 30s, had never made a feature length film, and had only done a couple shorts on YouTube. Uh, it's absolutely brilliant, and I can't wait to see what this guy does next.
Yeah, I have actually seen that TIFF interview as well. I will throw a link to it if you're watching. I did it again. If you're listening to us on Spreaker or on our website, gotaminute.reviews.com, there will be a link to that within this chapter. That TIFF interview, because it is a really, really interesting watch. All right, well, there's our top 10 for 2019. I'm surprised that for the second year in a row, you and I picked the same movie as number one. In fact, we lined up on the top two. So
Yeah, I'm very surprised that Hereditary was your number one.
yeah, no, I absolutely loved it. I can't stop thinking about it.
Hmm.
Alrighty, well, let's turn the tables then and have a little fun with Kevin's bottom five movies of the year. This could hurt a little bit, folks.
Yeah, so as we kind of hinted at, normally I do go out of my way to see bad movies. I admit that.
It's true.
I really love seeing a terrible movie. Like to me the worst thing a movie can be is just boring middle of the road. If a movie's gonna be like hilariously bad, that's a ton of fun to me, and I'm happily willing to pay for a ticket to see something that is incredibly stupid that I can just laugh at for 90 minutes. This year, that really isn't what most of these were. Most of these were movies that I thought would at least have a chance to be decent and just were over the top terrible. So, without further ado, my number five is The Nun. Um, The Nun is I don't even understand what we were doing with this movie. So Taissa Farmiga,
Taisa.
yeah,
Yeah, Taisa Farmiga.
she is the star of the movie. This is a movie set in the Conjuring universe, and her sister, who she looks exactly like but
Hmm.
younger, Vera Farmiga, is the star of The Conjuring. The two characters are not related in any way. And I just nothing against Taissa Farmiga, but
Right.
why on earth are you casting her in this movie as the star if it's not in any way associated with Vera Farmiga's character
Right.
from the
Someone who
actual
looks
main
identical
universe?
to her. Yeah.
It's absurd. This is, I mean, it's kind of funny that this is number 5 on my list, considering both of our number ones for best. Hereditary is everything that's right with horror filmmaking. This is everything that's not. This is nothing but jump scares. This is the laziest possible version of what a horror movie is. And I really hated it. And from a franchise that for the most part has been good. The Conjuring movies themselves have been good. There are 2 Annabelle movies. One of them is good, one of them is not. Um, this is a really, really disappointing low point for the franchise.
So how many things does it get right? None.
Yes,
And that's
well
my
done.
only contribution is terrible, terrible puns. Go on.
Yeah,
Number
well
four,
done.
sir.
So number 4, speaking of everything that's wrong with modern filmmaking, is
Oh, good.
Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald.
Ah, yes.
I ranted about this in a review for our channel. I will do even more so now because I despise what this movie is. I hate this version of filmmaking. I hate when a movie has absolutely nothing to add except for exposition, except for tying characters to other characters from the franchise at large. This is just continuity and exposition as a movie, essentially. There's no redeeming quality to the movie whatsoever, and there's almost no story here. The only story ends up being the last 45 seconds. We finally get to the fucking point of the movie, and by then it's like I don't care anymore. And the last 45 seconds is okay, come back and see the next one. It reminds me a lot of, and I really enjoyed this franchise, the Hunger Games franchise.
Okay.
um I I want to
Not a
say
fan myself, but whatever.
Catching Fire was the 2-part finale.
Yeah, sounds right.
Catching Fire Part 1 is a very similar movie to this that I deeply hated as well. I like the rest of the franchise, but Part 1 of Catching Fire is just not a movie. Nothing happens for 2 hours. They give
Mockingjay,
you
sorry. Mockingjay. That was the
okay,
two-parter.
okay. So yeah, so nothing happens in the first half of the 2-part finale, and then at the end they give you one reveal, and it's like, okay, come back and pay for another ticket, and we'll show you the rest of the story.
Which
That
people did in
is
spades.
yeah, and that is absolutely terrible. Like movies cost a lot of money, like we worked this out when I filed the review. Like the average ticket price where we live for a movie is like, I don't know, $12, $13. So if you have a family of 4, now we're at $50 just for the tickets.
Right.
Now you buy food and stuff, you're at like nearly $100 to see a movie as a family of 4.
Yep.
To present a movie that actually has nothing at all to give and is not even trying to be a movie or tell a complete story, it's just basically an episode of a TV series, is borderline criminal. Like
Yeah.
I despise that development in filmmaking in recent years. And yeah, this was one of the worst examples of it I've ever seen.
Well, this is a byproduct of the every studio has to have a franchise, movement that we're seeing right now, where it's got to be, oh no, it can't be just one movie. It's got to be 5 or 6 because we have to have a franchise. Disney's got franchises, so therefore Warner has to have franchises, and Sony has to have franchises, and Universal has to have franchises. And I think the quality really suffers as a result. I mean, some of those franchises are good, but others are just there very cynically to make money. They're all there to make money. I shouldn't say that some of them are just to make money. They're all there to make money, but some of them are doing it very, very cynically.
Yeah, and I mean, so the Avengers Infinity War is kind of similar in that that's also a two-part finale
Mm-hmm.
to the universe, so to speak. And the difference is Infinity War, if you just watch it as an individual movie, it just works. It's
Right.
a movie. And all Marvel movies are that. And that
Yes.
is the thing that so many of these studios are forgetting when they're making these movies is actually make a movie that works as a movie. It can't just be, this isn't TV. We're not just going to flip on the next movie. We're not binging this stuff. This is people are paying money to come to the theater, and it's really really terrible cynically that this is something that has become all too common in Hollywood these days.
Really surprising, especially from J.K. Rowling as well, who, she's been a great storyteller for a lot of years now, and I don't know what to think about this. I didn't even bother to see it because you were almost certainly absolutely right in everything that you said, and this you can just tell from the trailers. In any case, let's move on and do your number 3.
My number 3 is Jurassic World: The Fallen Kingdom.
Woohoo!
Yeah, this
That is one big pile of shit.
yeah, that is a deeply terrible movie. I don't understand anything that's happening, and more to the point. So I saw an interview with Colin Trevorrow where he was talking about what Jurassic World 3 will look like. And spoiler warning for part 2. Part 2 ends with the clone kid releasing dinosaurs into the United States. Just loose dinosaurs are roaming the United States.
That sentence alone, I mean...
Yeah, it's a really, really stupid ending, but in theory, it sets up what would be a fun, if really absurd and over the top, part 3, which is
Right.
dinosaurs rampaging through the United States. I actually would have been excited for that, but he says that's not what he was teasing, and that's not the movie he wants to do.
Oh my god.
So like,
Why?
why are you doing this? Why are
Why?
you like this, Colin Trevorrow? Why are you
you
like
a hack? Why are you the worst writer in Hollywood? And why do people keep hiring you?
Yeah, I don't understand any part of that. I don't get it. It seems like such a shoo-in. You just have dinosaurs rampaging through the United States. It's really silly and stupid, but it would have been crazy, over the top, and super fun.
Sure, man,
And instead, he doesn't want to do that, apparently. So,
oh man.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so my number 2 is the one movie on the list that I went to see that I knew I was going to hate, and I was there specifically because I knew it was going to be terrible. That is Slender Man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let me just say this up front. God bless Joey King. She is doing yeoman's work in really, really terrible movies. If you remember, we did for Bar 42 last year, we did a top 10, and I did my bottom 5. And last year, my worst movie was Wish Upon, also starring Joey King. So congratulations, Joey King. Yeah, round of applause. Slender Man is everything that's terrible about horror movie filmmaking, even more so than The Nun. This is really, really hacky and terrible. Nothing makes any sense. You can tell that they really cut this down because none of none of the character deaths actually happen on screen, or
Right.
almost none of them. There are a lot of shots in the trailer of different characters dying that you just don't ever see in the movie because they just took it all out. I don't know if it was to get to a PG rating. I don't know if there was some other reason that they decided to do this. I don't get it. I don't get anything that's happening. It's just kind of like it's it's a really badly put together movie. It's badly edited. And yeah, there it does feature one particular scare that is absolutely hilarious. It's meant to be a very scary moment in the movie, and I saw
Go ahead and spoil
this.
this one too, because I want to hear it. I still haven't seen it.
So basically, one of the girls in the movie, I can't remember any of the other cast members' names or their characters' names because who the
That's
fuck
probably
cares
best.
about the
Well, that's
characters?
probably best for their careers that you don't remember them too.
Yeah, she was the one that seemed not aggressively terrible in her role. So
High praise.
she goes to meet with this boy at his place, and they start to make out on the couch. And then the Slender Man, will make you see things that aren't there? Question mark. None of what the Slender Man actually does is particularly well defined. And the guy she's making out with suddenly starts to like his head starts to move, and it's this really cheesy effect of like his head like vibrating really fast, and it starts to distort, and he starts to just like yell, and it's meant to be scary. I saw this in a relatively full theater of like young people because that is what this movie's made for.
Right.
Uh, Almost everyone was crying, laughing at how absurd it looked. It is the singular, like, most absurd scene I've seen in a movie in ages. It is hilariously bad.
Oh man. Yeah. Why did they even bother making that movie? That's I like.
I mean, they all make their money back. So, like, you take a movie with no budget, you loosely tie it to something horror related. People like seeing scary movies, especially young people. It'll make its money back. It's just easy money printing for a studio.
Yeah, but also taking advantage of a real world situation too, where people actually died. Like,
Yeah,
come on, man. Actually, did that person actually die?
I can't remember if she
I
died or if she was.
I
It
know they
was an
tried to
attempted
kill
murder.
her.
Yeah.
Yeah. In any case, all right. Moving on. Number one worst movie of the year, Kevin.
This I saw very recently this year. Holmes and Watson.
Hmm.
Where Slender Man had people in tears laughing at how silly it was. Holmes and Watson had almost no one watching the movie laughing at the screening that I was at, and I saw it on Christmas Day later in the evening after I had finished up with family and had Christmas dinner and
Right.
everything. I went to a late screening of the movie. The screening was full of tons of families who were just done Christmas dinner and were just ready to laugh and have a good time. And it was so quiet in that theater that at one point there was one joke that a girl in the audience laughed at, and everyone turned to her as if she was doing something wrong. Like, what are you doing? Why are you laughing? Um,
Like she broke the streak or so, you know?
Yeah, or like it was the same look that you would have had from people if like her phone had started ringing or something. It was like, how dare you? Like, what are you doing? I cannot believe how unfunny this is for a movie starring Will Ferrell and John C. Riley, because
Hmm.
Step Brothers is among the best comedies of the last 15 years.
Objectively, man. This isn't even a subjective thing. It is a ridiculously funny movie.
Yeah, and Talladega Nights I love a lot. I have all the time in the world for this pairing, and to see them just absolutely floundering in something that is this terrible and unfunny, and to see Will Ferrell go back to, I think his name is Ethan Cohen,
Yes.
is the writer director here, not Ethan Cohen.
No relation to either of the Coen brothers.
This is I don't understand why, because the last movie Will Ferrell made with him was Get Hard, and that was terrible.
Hmm.
This is a lot worse than that even, and yeah, there's just no redeeming quality whatsoever. This is so catastrophically unfunny that I don't understand how these people ended up associated with this movie.
And how it got released. Just looking at the trailer, the whole joke about, ooh, a woman doctor. Ooh, can we get a real doctor in here? Because
Yep.
because 1800s.
Yeah,
And
the
therefore
movie
funny.
the movie sure thinks the passage of time is funny because that's 90% of the humor. It's that joke. It's a joke about how medicine was inferior in the 1800s. It's jokes about the Titanic. Jokes about like taking things that. So here's what I'll say about the movie. There is a storyline about Sherlock trying to find the perfect hat. That is one of the plots of the movie. We are 45 seconds into the movie, I think, and they're doing a montage. It's the opening joke of the movie is him trying to find a hat to wear to this thing. And we're about 45 seconds into the movie, and he pulls out a Make America Great Again hat. And we're less than a minute into the movie, and I knew I was in deep, deep trouble.
So,
Because I was like,
what?
what is that? Like, what are you doing? Why? And there are multiple Donald Trump jokes in the movie.
Oh my God.
There are jokes about selfies, and
The
it's just
selfie thing was kind of funny in the trailer anyway, where he pulls out a giant, camera with the tripod thing on it and everything. The classic late 1800s camera thing. That was,
Yeah,
was all right.
in a trailer it probably works. In a movie, when that scene is probably like a minute and a half long,
Oh, come
it
on.
it aggressively does not work.
Oh,
They just keep making duck face and yelling like "Hey girl" over and over again. That is the joke.
oh man. I haven't even seen it and I want to hurt the people involved. All right. Well, as promised, that was painful.
Yeah.
There you go, Kevin's bottom five. Plus our top 10 for the year 2018. Wow, what a range of movies we've gone through here in the last hour. Anyway, that's sorry.
I will say two things briefly about my top 10 list. So there's very little mainstream movies. Basically, Infinity War and Into the Spider-Verse are the
Right.
two kind of mainstream movies that made the list. I will say it was a really disappointing year overall for mainstream, like wide releases like that. But this was a really, really good year for movie. Because I will say last year, our top movie, both of us had Blade Runner 2049.
Right.
And just looking at my top 10 list, I think I would have Blade Runner 2049 number 6 on my list this year, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
This
that seems
is
about right.
for like high end movies, this was a really particularly great year. So please do seek this out.
Yeah, we didn't even get to talk about one of our favorite debutantes this year. It was Coralie Farge and her movie Revenge, which was an amazing revenge movie. It's just
Yeah, another example of like really great high end filmmaking from people. And I do want to very briefly, I have a little anecdote about my top 10 list.
do
So
it.
I started my top 10 list, I want to say at the end of March, maybe I initially
Hmm.
wrote one out. And then I just planned on, as I went to see a movie, if I really loved it, I would open up the list and I would swap out where I swapped it out. So I want to give a big shout out and honorable mention on my list to the movie A Quiet Place,
Mm,
which I initially had as number 10 on my list when I made it back in March.
right.
And then every single time I would update the list with something, I would look at it and I'd be like, you know what? No, I don't want to take A Quiet Place off yet. And I would end up taking the number 9 movie on the list off instead. And I
Right.
kept it there from March all the way until December, Into the Spider-Verse is the movie that finally knocked that movie off of my top 10 list.
Right.
I really loved it. It's well worth a watch. So credit to that movie. And I just thought it was funny that every single time I opened my list, it was there at number 10. And I was like, you know what? No, that's not leaving yet. I'm taking the number 9 movie off instead.
Nicely done. All right. Yeah. I mean, it's been a tough year to sort of sort through that top 10 because, as you say, there's been a lot of really, really good stuff here. As you say, though, definitely, mostly anyway, not the mainstream stuff.
I mean, neither of us even have A Star Is Born, which is probably the front runner for Best Picture, probably.
Yeah.
Question mark?
It's between that and Roma, I think, right now. So
yeah, and
yeah, we both enjoyed that movie too. So
yeah, I loved it. It just didn't crack the list.
Well, there you go. Really, really difficult year to sort this through, but hey, we did it. Way to go. Pat ourselves on the back. And we will call it a day. That is it for another episode of Got a Minute More. Thank you for joining us. As always, follow us on Facebook, Instagram. Got a Minute Reviews is what you're looking to find us on there. And GotAMinuteReviews.com is our website. Please visit, watch our reviews there. You can read them if you don't want to watch, because, you know, who likes video? That's not a thing. Join us again in a couple of weeks' time, probably. We'll sort through some of the movies that we've been watching in January. And I don't know, pretty soon we're going to have to start teeing up that Oscar special, Kev.
Mm-hmm.
Getting to be time. Thank you once again, and we'll see you soon.